Hello, everyone. This is Dennis Schultz. I'm the Executive Director for the Blacks in Technology Foundation, and I'm here with the folks from Brilliant Black Minds, and we're going to be talking about how you can hack your resume to get into a role. I don't know if there's much I know about Jake, so I'm not going to try and embarrass myself and introduce you, but Jake, if you want to just introduce yourself, tell a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and we'll jump right into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Dennis and everyone else on the call, thank you for letting me join you all today. So my name is Jake Mansfield. I'm currently a recruiter with Karat internally. I have been recruiting and in the TA space for about 8 years in various capacities. I got my start in the space actually working for the Career Center of a college in the Reno, Nevada area, and transitioned into full-on recruiting from that point. And again, been doing that for about 7 years in various capacities, from recruiting agencies to corporate recruiting to now the lovely opportunity to recruit for a startup such as Karat for the last 1.5 years or so. So that's a little bit about me. I'm currently located out of Austin, Texas, originally a West Coast individual from Reno, Nevada. But again, currently in Texas as of about the last 1.5 years or so. So that's myself. And Lucas, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself as well, but go for it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Hello and welcome, everybody. My name is Lucas Purnell. I am joining you as the Client Success Manager for the Brilliant Black Minds program. Dennis and I work together regularly, and we thought this would be an amazing opportunity to bring some additional value to the Blacks in Technology Foundation participants and all of kind of the joint organization pieces. Thinking about my work history and my resume, Jake and I go back just a little bit here. He and I have known each other further reaching than just the Brilliant Black Minds program. He and I did recruit together at one point, but that's where my career took a little bit more of a pivot, and I've moved more into the tech space and tech industry. I have a background, so I come today, just giving a little bit of my credentials, I come today with a background in technology, a degree in such, and I also always love to drop. I'm had an opportunity to work handily with all of our program managers here for the Brilliant Black Minds program. So it's an amazing opportunity. We're very excited for the presentation today. I want to share a brief agenda for us. So we've gone through introductions. Great opportunity to connect with everybody. I love everybody dropping their locations in the chat. We're going to use, just for housekeeping today, we're going to use the chat as an opportunity to really stay connected. So as you have questions, please use the webinar chat function as a way to ask those. I'll keep those up on the side and try to answer those in live time. And Jake and I will try to continue that banter. So we've got a great presentation, but this, as much as it is a presentation for us, this is also an opportunity to really connect and answer any very specific questions that you might have. Well, we have a quick call to action for signing up for Brilliant Black Minds and the Blacks in Technology Foundation. So if you're not a member of one or both of those organizations, we'll have a quick pause to do so. We're going to go through the goals of a resume. Why are resumes important? Why do we care about those things? We're going to really dive deep into the brain of Jake here and really understand, from a talent acquisition professional, why do we care about these things, and how is this going to help us land that interview? We're going to talk about simple tricks to enhance your odds and opportunities. So any buzzwords, keyword searches that you can come up with, and beating that filter. And then one of the other things is really kind of contextualizing the fact that you, as the software engineer, have done the job that you're applying for. So you're the expert, and how are you going to convey your expertise to that talent acquisition professional that has never done software engineering, or whatever role that you're joining for? We're going to have an opportunity to practice and do some live time practice. So we'll use that chat function some more. And then at the end, we'll do some closing remarks and question and answer. So again, have an opportunity if you wanted to ask those questions throughout the program, or if you wanted to just wait until the very end and ask those all. but we love to see it. Jonathan, we see you live there. Hello world. I remember that from my very early coding classes. Everybody learns to start with hello world. So hello to you. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, we've done some introductions. You know who we are. And we're going to pause really quickly with just a few QR codes. I'm also going to drop these links in the chat in case you're joining from your phone. But I would love to encourage everybody to sign up for Brilliant Black Minds. And if you're not a member of the Blacks in Technology Foundation as well, I just want to draw a call to action there to sign up for those. The wonderful benefit that you're going to get joining Brilliant Black Minds is you're going to have an opportunity to do three things. You're going to be able to practice like a champion. You're going to be able to interview with confidence and unlock opportunities. The Brilliant Black Minds program offers free access to technical interviews and a skilled coach as you practice. So you have an opportunity to do live technical interviews. When you have done those, you're going to work with those experienced engineers, and they're going to provide you with an assessment of your strengths and opportunities for progress. They're going to give you live technical coaching, give you written communication, and give you an opportunity to improve your skill so that you can unlock those opportunities and land with an employer in the future. And at Brilliant Black Minds, we currently are partnered with 5 different partners of brilliance. That's what we're calling our partners within Brilliant Black Minds. So you have an opportunity to join, take these free technical interviews, and then potentially earn an opportunity, a job opportunity at one of our 5 corporate partners. So you have a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to do so. And if we do have some folks that have joined that are not part of the Blacks in Technology Foundation, I do want to note that both memberships here are free. So there's no cost to you. You have an opportunity to jump in. And the Blacks in Technology Foundation, you have an opportunity to stomp the divide between the Black tech workers and to fundamentally influence and affect change on an industry that has historically not sought parity with respect to Black workers. So the Blacks in Technology Foundation has an intent to level the playing field through training, education, networking, and mentoring with the support of allies, partners, sponsors, and global membership. So join the membership. You have an opportunity to join both today. Big call outs here on the screen. Scan both with your phone. You can do them very quickly. We also have the links in the chat if you wanted to click. We'll just take 30 more seconds to sign up. And then right when we hit the 12 minute, we'll jump into the next slide. While we do so, I'm going to try to get this glare off of my face, because eventually as the sun keeps going down, it's going to blind me. So give me one moment as I try to do that. Okay, we did it. We got it. All right, glares off the face, sun's out of my eyes, and we are ready to get rolling. All right, everyone, let's jump into the meat and potatoes of this presentation. Let's talk about the goals of a great resume. And Jake, I'm going to hand this slide off to you as a member of talent acquisition to talk through the goals of a great resume.
All right, thank you, Lucas. Appreciate it. All right, everyone. So today, if there's one thing that I want you all to take away from this is everything as it pertains to resumes, applications, things of that nature are somewhat subjective. There is not a one-size-fits-all to every application that you'll ever submit as a candidate. And so the idea is to provide you all with the tools and the ideas and the tips and the guidance to hopefully, again, set you up for that application and the getting your foot in the door for those interviews. And so again, a great resume is not going to get you the job. You know, that it can sometimes be a misconception. And, you know, ultimately what it's there for is to highlight you and not what you've done since the day you were born or what you did over the weekend, but really what you're applying to, what skills, what have you done in your experience to that directly pertains to that. And so it's your opportunity to really highlight those key relevant specifics. So again, knowledge, skills, and accomplishments. You know, be concise. No one likes a very busy resume. There is a rule of thumb of keeping your resume to 1 page. as time goes on and, things change and you acquire more and more work experience, you become a little more lenient from a talent side of the house to, as it pertains to that one page. But again, what we want on that one page is going to be clear, concise, relevant to the role that you are hoping to get your foot in the door for. You don't want it to be too busy. You want it to read very, very clearly. You want it to pertain to the reader and make their life as easy as possible and allow you to highlight those quick talking points, or I guess resume points in this sense. Because again, if you just glance over to the right, it's crazy. And this number varies from time to time, depending on who you talk to about it. But more times than not, a recruiter, a sourcer, whoever is reviewing resumes is only going to look probably for 20 to 30 seconds max. That, in a nutshell, should be enough time for that recruiter or sourcer, whoever is reviewing, to at least understand, okay, this person meets the criteria of what we're looking for this role, or they do not meet this criteria. So in this, oh, it looks like the stream is lagging. Is it okay?
I think it's coming through.
Okay.
I'm coming through, but if Jonathan, if you're still having problems, please let us know.
Cool. So in regards to, again, that time frame, right? That is your time to make that impact and show them that, hey, I do meet this criteria. And so goal number one is your ticket into that interview. And so we'll go, I believe the next slide, Lucas, if you don't mind, is going to be things to look for. How do I make that impression? What are some of the tricks, if you will, or parameters that I can follow, no matter the role, no matter the company, as it pertains to the resume?
Awesome. And Jake, before we get to those tricks, I'd love to just pick your brain really quickly.
Please.
You talked about two things that I thought were really important, and I'm putting on my old recruiting hat here, and I definitely want to kind of lean into your expertise. You talked about the difference between like a sourcer, a recruiter, and I'm not sure if, I might be over-explaining things here, but the greater audience might not be familiar with, especially at larger tech companies, that there is a nuance between a sourcer, someone that's just looking at resumes, and a head recruiter, and then another round or another layer. So is there any way that you might be able to extrapolate on like how many layers of review someone might actually have to get through to even get to the hiring manager?
Absolutely. Trick question, sort of, or I'm going to give a cheat answer, and it's going to all depend, right? And I think it falls back on the applicant's plate to do that research and to really understand. You can only Google so much. You can only do so much research on a company to really understand the inner workings. And so that being said, it's very case by case. Some key points or some assumptions an applicant can make is size of company, right? If you're applying to, Google, they probably have multiple layers of sourcers per departments, per teams, per locations, and those sourcers will most likely be doing that sourcing front. So everything, what I mean in regards to sourcing, so going through inbound applications, leaning on LinkedIn and other platforms to do outbound sourcing to find candidates for specific roles and opportunities. And so then, in this example, let's say they find that individual, it's then up to them to essentially pass off to the recruiter for engagement, for explaining the role, explaining the company, explaining the why as to why someone would want to work there. And so it can get extremely granular when you want to get into inbound versus outbound, and big company versus small company. But I'd say from a very normalized or kind of rule of thumb is it's not uncommon for an applicant to apply, have it be reviewed by a sourcer or a coordinator of some sort, basically using just the resume. These individuals understand just basically check boxes and what is the main criteria to pass along to that next step, which would most likely be a recruiter in that sense. At that point in time, a recruiter gets your application and at this point your resume and understands, okay, they meet that very base level criteria. Now let's understand their goals, their skills, their interests, what they've done to date, how it pertains to the specific opportunity that we're meeting about, and then how, of course, they see fit and how well that individual was able to conduct themselves in that initial phone screen or interview, if you will. From there, it can vary drastically from a hiring manager screen, then to a panel or an interview loop, or maybe they're meeting with 3 to 6 individuals. So all in all, it's very much a multi-layered process that, if a company is efficient, may take 2 to 3 weeks. There are other companies, though, that, it may take multiple weeks, if not, over a month to 2 months throughout that process.
Awesome. Thank you. So to put a nice bow on it, when we're talking about getting through the various layers and demystifying the application process, depending on the size of the company, you may end up having one organization that has maybe 2 or 3 layers before the person is even approached for a phone screen. Or if it's maybe a smaller company, a startup, maybe a more mom and pop type of organization, it might just be you're applying directly to the recruiting manager or even the hiring manager, and they're going to be doing the screening. So really understanding the nuance and how and where you're applying is going to help to differentiate you and your resume as you apply to various organizations. That's wonderful. So let's jump into, as you said, enhancing your odds. So there's some simple tricks that you can take. And Jake, I'm not sure if you want to take this one too.
Yeah, no, would love to. This is, actually one of kind of my favorite topics. Because again, keep in mind, it's subjective and there is no one size fits all or, a secret 100% accurate way of doing it. And so again, being able to essentially dissect the opportunity and the position or the role and the company of what you're applying to, and then again, keeping these kind of base, tactics in your arsenal is going to be crucial. So first and foremost, got ahead of myself there a little bit, is format. There's also this misconception, especially modern day, in the tech space with all these tools and resources we have at our disposal is, how do I stick out? Well, let's create this fun, colorful, loud, elaborate resume to really stick out of the bunch. And I am one of those that would say to probably steer away from that, because unless, of course, your passion shifts to design or some sort of marketing, profession, then absolutely, that definitely pertains to you. But from a base level, you want to have a clear, concise, consistent format. Things that you want to touch on are, name, prior work history, objectives, education. Really, those are going to be your main points that you want to be seen, again, referring back to that 20 to 30 seconds as the individual who's reviewing is looking at your resume. And so with that, those are going to be, that basic content. And so having it clear and concise spacing, being able, you yourself, when in doubt, look at your resume and say, if I knew nothing about myself and I've never seen my resume in my life, and this comes across my desk, am I able to find the pieces that make sense for this application? Again, that work experience, that education, any certs or additional licenses that pertain. Those are going to be the things that you want to highlight and essentially build around. Things like timeline is a huge one. I'm going to continue to refer back to that 20 to 30 seconds because, again, I think it's a good baseline to keep in mind. let's say you've had 10 jobs, or various volunteer assignments and things of that nature, and you're just listing all of those first. In 20 to 30 seconds, by the time I get down to the bottom where the meat and potatoes of your resume and your experiences is, I'm probably moving on. I'm probably like, this person is fantastic. They do all of these things and have a great variety of experiences, but I'm looking for a software engineer at this time. And in that 20 to 30 seconds, by the time I that time ran out, I didn't even get to that point. So you want to have your most recent, your most relevant information at the top. Now, another question that I get quite a bit is, okay, well, I want to become a software engineer, but I worked, 3 years at, fill in the blank, something that is not a software engineer at a company that does not pertain to the tech space. And I did that, before 5 years ago. Do I add that to the resume? And I would say probably not, because it doesn't necessarily pertain to the job and the role that you want as a software engineer. Now, again, it depends on the individual and where they are in a career, from a career perspective. But again, instead of highlighting the role that you had for the couple years, you're going to want to highlight your education that highlights the software engineering experience. You're going to want to highlight the coding languages that you're familiar with. You're going to highlight more of that skill set than work experience. And so it's being able to really dissect, is it the education? Is it the experience? Is it the extracurricular stuff that makes the most sense for this particular role? So that's one kind of rule of thumb there. But again, to note there, that reverse chronological order is huge.
And just to jump in really quickly, sorry to cut you off, Jake.
No,
I know that speaking about this in generalities is hard for some folks. I'm a very visual learner myself, and you might be a very visual learner yourself as well. So in just about 3 minutes, what we're going to do is we'll go through an exercise where we're actually going to be able to see this in practice. You're going to be able to see exactly what we mean when Jake says listing headings in importance. Do we put education first, or experience first, or skills first? What do we put, and where do we put it? So we're going to be able to show you exactly what that means. So sorry, floor's back to you, Jake.
No, and thank you, because that brings me to my next point is let's focus on the mistakes, right? I generalized and threw a ton at you, and I know it's a lot. And so, like Lucas said, we have some examples, but let's talk about common mistakes, because really those are much louder, come across much louder than the good on a resume. For better or for worse, that is the reality of resume reviewing. And so, first and foremost, spelling and grammar. It doesn't matter if you are the individual reviewing has a PhD in English, or might just be a recruiter of 1 year fresh out of college. Those are going to stick out, and for better or for worse are going to have a negative impact on the perception of that application. Missing contact information. Nothing is worse than having an application submitted, being good, getting the thumbs up, but then having no way of the individual reaching back out to you, whether it be email, whether it be phone number. A lot of these places have a regimented process in how they reach out to you. And so if one of those pieces is missing, it's going to hurt your odds or the chances of getting in touch for that role. Even if it's a typo on the email, even if you submit a phone number and not an email, maybe it's their process to send an initial email out automatically, because a lot of the stuff, at least parts of these processes, are automated. And so again, you want to do all that you can for nothing to fall through the cracks. So again, I also touched on it, tailoring the application, the resume per the industry. as you're explaining your experience, your work experience, try to refrain from using personal pronouns. You want to highlight collectively what you've done. You don't want it to come across as, I did this, I did that. During my time here, I did X, Y, and Z. You want to say, I'm going to cheat because I'm on the recruiting side, but responsible for sourcing X amount of candidates per week to fill X amount of roles per year, or what have you. Because again, just the I's and I did this and I did that, it's going to come across just a little unprofessional and not really pertaining to the audience that, again, is going to be reviewing that resume.
Jake, one thing that I really like that you used in that example, and something that I'd like to call out, is when we talk about resume language and what it should be, you used fact-based resume language when you gave that example. Just off the top of your head, you gave, I produced X amount of resume reviews or whatever it might be. And I think that that's also a really good call out, which is utilizing fact-based language and making sure when you're when you're avoiding those common mistakes, those glaring mistakes, having that fact-based language is so important. So sorry to jump in again. I wanted to paint that color, passing it back to you.
I know, absolutely. And it's such a good point, because again, anyone can create a resume that says base level things. I did this, or, I can code, right? That's great. That's great on paper. But being able to say, and I myself am not technical in any way, but being able to say you contributed to, X, Y, and Z utilizing this language on this platform speaks a lot louder than I code. And so being able to hit on those key points, those key tools, those key skill sets in that format and in that manner is going to go much further than, again, I can code, or I'm a software engineer. Another thing, now kind of pivoting towards kind of caution, right? And that's sort of the theme in these mistakes, but some things that really go unnoticed in the application process are opening yourself up to unconscious biases, or really just unwanted biases that no one maybe thinks about, right? That can be anything from, adding pictures to addresses to dates from, when you graduated high school or college, where, specific, things you attended or places you worked. It's all very relevant in a sense, but there are ways you can go about, again, just being cautious of that. So for instance, one thing that, me and Lucas used to definitely be cautious of when we would help candidates, years ago when he was still in the TA space, is, addresses, for instance, right? Google, we all know about it. It's very easy to plug a very specific address into Google, and you can find a lot out about somebody. Now, that's not proper practice, and that's not something that recruiters should be doing in any way. But again, and hopefully, fingers crossed, I'm going to give every recruiter out there the benefit of the doubt. Hopefully they're not, right? But if someone has a little extra time on their hands and you have a very specific address and they Google it, for better or for worse, whether you live in a multi-million-dollar mansion or you don't, it can affect the process. And so, again, just be cautious. A little bit goes a long way, whether it be county or city or, things of that nature versus I live at this address on this road. It's something to keep in mind. And again, to circle back to the school as well. If I've been in the, workforce for, I'm going to give myself the benefit of the doubt, let's say 10 years, right? But I graduated high school back in 2004. Do I need to put that? And in addition to that, if I have a college degree, that essentially supplants my high school, because one can assume, well, if I have my college degree, I at least have a high school diploma or equivalent to obtain that. So there's a lot of these different kind of activation points within a resume as well. And so something to keep in mind, again, as you're building your own.
That's great. Those are all really, really good points. And Jake, I'm going to paint or tie a nice bow on this one as well. Talking about this, the really cautionary tales is, I think the biggest things and the biggest learnings that we're taking away are to be sure that we're not opening ourselves up to unconscious biases in the workplace. So whether that be running our resume through a simple spell checker or removing a specific address and instead saying Greater Los Angeles area instead of a very specific city and state and street, to even putting any identifiers, personal identifiers, a picture, anything that would generate age or gender or sex or any of those things onto a resume, which could have unconscious bias kind of tied into it. Now, Jake, we had two great questions that came through on the chat. The first question is from Robert, and Robert asked, how do we balance putting relevant work experience while also covering gaps from prior jobs that maybe don't pertain to the industry? And I would, I don't know if you agree here, but Robert, one of the ways that Jake and I used to do this for our folks that we were helping build resumes was we would still put that work experience, say if it was in the decade of the most recent work experience we had, but we would not utilize as much real estate on our resume to talk through those points. So we want to be sure that we're showcasing those dates. For instance, 2010 to 2012, I delivered pizzas or whatever it might be, right? Not relevant to software engineering. I gigged and was part of the Uber economy, whatever it might be. I'm going to downplay that, maybe add 2 bullet points onto that section. I'm still going to have those dates there. But for the areas that were really relevant, or any special projects that I utilized, or any credentialing that I did, or licensings that I received, or boot camps or trainings that I attended, I'm absolutely going to use that real estate to bolster that on my resume. Talk about that more. Jake, would you agree that that's maybe the best practice there?
Yeah, couldn't agree more. One thing I want to make clear too is never be ashamed in any way of what's on your resume, right? Because to your point, Robert, yeah, a gap, if you just left, 5 years, let's say, off the resume, that's going to raise questions too. So it is a balancing act. But yeah, Lucas, you're spot on. The fact that you're still doing something, shows that drive. And just because it's not directly pertaining to your next step in your career, that's okay. But again, being able to list it to show that fill, if you will, of that gap, someone's going to see them and be like, oh, okay, so-and-so did X, Y, and Z for that time. That's understandable. And then for the last 2 years, last 3 years, 5 years, fill in the blank, they've really hit it hard here at this place. And then yes, use that length in that resume, or that 1 page kind of rule of thumb, to really eat that up and really pertain to the skills and that for that particular role.
Awesome. And we did have one additional question. Would you suggest that we put our state and school degree without the dates and city? Now, that's a great question. I think for education, and Jake, back me up here or correct me if I'm wrong, but for school, what we want to do is, if you have a college degree, you don't necessarily need to utilize the section for high school. You don't need to put a high school diploma on there. And then for college degree, if it's within the last maybe 5 years, I would absolutely put a date on there, because there are a lot of opportunities for early career software engineers and a lot of opportunities for internships. But if you are 5 years removed from graduate, then it is really pertinent and a great opportunity for you to simply just remove the date off of there. And the inferred response from having your education on your resume is that you earned that degree. You could even put degree earned and then the title of your degree with any major or minor study that you had, but definitely relevant to have the city and the state that that school was in, as well as the name of that school. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to move forward. We've got a couple great, we've got a couple great questions coming through. We have a Q&A section that we want to be sure that we get to. So I'm going to move forward just for the sake of time. But we will come back to those questions. And if we don't answer them today, we will certainly follow up with you personally to answer those questions as well.
Lucas, one last thing. Sorry to interrupt, because I know we want to be cognizant of time. But one thing to really hammer home too that I didn't spend much time on is the keywords and those buzzwords. And again, it's getting really in depth of, it kind of goes back to saying, oh, I code, but then being able to really elaborate on those keywords, those coding language, those specific processes, those functions. Highlighting that is also really crucial in your description when you're eating up that space on the resume, because a lot of these systems that recruiters use, sourcers use, they're going to do Boolean searches. They're going to lean on those keywords. So if you have those, and again, if it's fact-based to your experience, they're going to, basically flag for that individual, and they're going to say, wow, they have, this language, this language, this language. They've had, these companies, they've had these instances. So keep in mind as you're building out your resume to really hone in on those key skill sets and buzzwords. So, well, that's all I have, Lucas. Apologies.
No worries. We've got some great questions coming through here for the Q&A function as well. I absolutely want to be sure that we get to all of these. I want to talk through just really quick resume, just call out and tips and tricks before we get into some samples to show the crew here. But when we talk about 3 big categories that you can add to your resume, that could be education, experience, and other. And other can take on skills or licensing or any of those pieces. For education, best tips and tricks is if you've achieved a 3.2 or higher, absolutely put your GPA on your resume. If you have achieved under a 3.2, it is not necessarily pertinent to put your GPA. Again, you don't want to, the cautionary tale here is don't position yourself in a place where unconscious bias could take over when the recruiter is looking through that resume. So 3.2 is kind of that threshold that we suggest. You should always put your minor, even if it's not necessarily relevant. I have a minor in something that's not relevant to the tech industry. I put that on my resume. Academic honors and awards, if you're part of the President's Awards, if you were part of any fraternal organizations, that is a great place to put those. Related certificates, any scholarships that you received in your time, especially for new grads with not so relevant work experience, or maybe you didn't have an internship, or you only have non-technical experience and you're trying to break into technical experience. You can absolutely bolster your resume with those certificates, those scholarships, any of those pieces that you received while you were in school. Licensures, related training and skills, and then new grads, if you've worked on a thesis or your senior project, that's also a really great place to talk about your project work that you've done. So you should absolutely talk about your technical projects, even if they're not paid technical projects. You can put those technical projects on your resume. So Scott, I hope that answers your question. And then Sophia, yes, absolutely. You would put boot camps and certificates right under that educational section. For experience, you can always put your summer and part-time jobs, any internships, any campus involvement. Maybe you're a president of a governing body, a president of your dorm. Maybe you were the communications director, or you did some software engineering projects. Maybe you helped one of the local churches with their databasing system. All of those things are amazing opportunities to put on your experience. And then any others that you have, any awards, volunteer work, trainings, completions, any leadership experience, membership organizations, or related experience and skills, those are all great to put on your resume. So how does that come across in application? What we're going to do is we're going to show you some resumes, and I'm going to give you a little hint. They start at some resumes that probably need the most work, all the way through to resumes that hit almost every single mark. It's maybe not the best resume at the very end, but it is pretty close to relatively polished. And I'd love to use the chat function here to maybe just get a couple ideas on places that this resume could improve, just utilizing our collective knowledge here on what we've learned in this seminar so far on areas that these resumes can improve. So let's dig in with some examples. What do you think we could utilize here? Or what do we think that we could do to improve this resume? Let's start maybe calling out 1 or 2 things in the chat. And you'll see that I've redacted quite a few like individualized naming pieces here. I'll get us started. The contact information, the email is in a hyperlink format with the word hyperlink. That's a great call out. Let me see if I can make this a little larger. Let me see. I'm not sure if I can make this larger on here. I apologize. This is the largest that I can make it on my screen, but great call out there. There's no LinkedIn profile. The missing email address is actually hidden under the word that says hyperlink that has then been hyperlinked. We have this giant profile that takes up a large amount of space on the top of this resume. And then there's a big gap of white space on the top. Exactly. Stephanie, you nailed it. It's just that huge white space, that header space. It's unnecessary. So formatting is really important. Jake, if you saw something like this, of course you would give it a glance, but this might not be one that you would work on readily, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, again, depending on level and the particular role, but yeah, first glance, I mean, it comes off as at the very base level, just not well refined, not kind of lacking a little bit of effort, and again, not really painting the best picture, probably.
Love it. Yep, absolutely. And there are some amazing callouts that are still happening, which is using filler words. Tatiana, I think you hit it on the head. You're using filler words like, I'm originally from California. I'm hoping to do X. Instead of kind of speaking those things into existence, and then dates are not decreasing in chronological order. And then bullet pointing the skills. You're absolutely right. We definitely want to have that in a bullet point format. Let's go to the next resume. So let's talk about this resume right here. What's going on here? What do we think is good or bad about this resume, and from the things that we have? Yes, it feels a bit busy.
I love these.
Yeah, the reference section should be removed unless asked. Absolutely. What else do we think about the resume here? I'll give you guys a couple others. We're talking about education is minimalized, areas expertise could be. There are too many lines that are happening in here. One of the other things is there is an inconsistency in font and formatting. So the formatting is very different across the resume. And that's part of the reason why it feels very busy. You can get all of this information on a resume and not have it be very busy. That's right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. This person probably doesn't need a summary of who they are because they've been in industry for so long. So that summary is probably unnecessary. Okay, let's move along to this next one. And again, these are getting a little bit better as we go along. So this person comes with some mortgage experience. What do we like about this one? What do we think could be cleaned up here? Some of these ones are a little trickier. What I like about these is what I like about this from my perspective, and Jake backed me up, is that you've got all the title headers that are the same font, and it is the same consistency across the board. The experience in each job is a little bit long. I think one of the other things, and I'll give you a hint, there's a big gap between the second job and that first job. That's right, Aaron, you found it there. So there's a big gap, and it might not be relevant work experience, but we should absolutely place that in there. Or if we have an opportunity to write a cover letter, we can explain that gap. Maybe we decided to take time away from work to be parents. You know, that's happening, and that's really important. That's right. Consistent versus consistently. Grammatical errors are really important to really kind of take a look at. Okay.
I would love to add to that one real quick, Lucas.
Yeah.
Something that sticks out to me too is they highlighted notable standouts. Consistently top 5 account manager for blank company. Close this, close that. So they highlighted those standouts. But if I'm reviewing that, my first question is, okay, well, where, when, and where did you do that? Is it for the company that you were a top 5 account manager for? Is it in some of these other stops along the way? So I would almost say those are great fact-based accolades, but plug them in where they're relevant in your experience.
Totally. Totally. I love that. So basically remove this notable standout section and put that into your relevant work experience. Bolster that experience a little bit more. Great. Okay, let's talk about maybe a software engineering resume. This is one that utilizes a consistent theme across the board, utilizes a consistent titling. Has an opportunity to talk about relevant projects. So maybe this is someone that's doing a career switching and they've switched careers. So they're going to talk about independent projects as well as experience that they have in industry. And they're going to utilize the right-hand justification, the right-hand side of this to talk about their skilling. But again, a good call out here, which is there's no project titles or specific software utilized for those projects. While we know this candidate knows C-based languages, Java-based languages, React-based languages, Swift and Python, that is not called out specifically in the projects that we have here. Some of the other things that I do like, and Jake, I don't know about you, but I like this resume. I think this resume flows well. One of the things that I like is that, especially as someone that's looking for a software engineering position, they've linked their GitHub here, which I think is something that you have an opportunity to really showcase your skill and showcase your skilling. They have a link to their personal website, and I will be honest with you, I did redact a lot of this information just to protect the candidate here. But they put their personal website link, they link their LinkedIn, they also put their email and phone number. But nowhere on here did they open themselves up to unconscious bias by putting a city. We live and work in this space that is remote, and so we don't necessarily need to put a city every single time. But again, another good call out here, which is Google templates may have too much spacing, but maybe that's a personal preference. You're absolutely right. So there is a lot of white space here, especially in the bottom section. Are we utilizing the spacing for that? Are we talking about our master's degree at length? Are we talking about our senior process and thesis? We can definitely utilize more of this space. And then the first bullet doesn't explain the depth of achievement and accomplishment. That's absolutely correct. So there's an opportunity to really explain that depth a little bit more. Okay, and then let's talk about maybe just your run-of-the-mill resume. This last one here, I've redacted a lot of stuff. You've got education, experience, and technical skills on this. What do we like about this resume? What do we not like about this resume? I'll give you a hint of something that I like. I like that the fonts are consistent across the board. I like that main callouts are bolded. And I like that as we go through, I like that it's showcasing at each company that there was a promotion or that this person had been promoted. Missing contact information. Yep.
I have a niche call out that it's probably the resume reviewing nerd in me, but you can tell that the margins have been very well utilized because they're not, look how close that information gets to the edge of the paper, right? So there are so many formatting possibilities to squeeze in to kind of go off that one page rule of thumb. So that's what sticks out to me there.
I love it. And I think one of the things as well is at the very bottom, we also say references and or CV can be furnished upon request. So we're not opening ourselves up by readily providing a bunch of non-professional references or professional references, and we're not giving the entirety of our work skill by providing a CV at the very beginning, but this is relevant experience, and we're providing relevant experience. Awesome. How long should the bullets be? 1, 2, or 3 lines? That's a great question. So bullets, you should typically try to be concise in your language. 6 to 10 words per bullet is pretty standard. Some may require a little bit more detail and explanation. So if you can't fit it in 6 to 10 words, I don't want you to make grammatical errors by utilizing that as a hard, fast rule. But again, upplay the relevant work experience, downplay the not so relevant work experience. You can see that this person's moved into client success from recruiting, from records management, from sales. And so sales is downplayed while the most recent work experience is upplayed a little bit. Primary difference between a resume and a CV. Great question. A resume is your most relevant work experience within the last maybe 5 or 10 years. Your CV is going to be a culmination of all of the work that you've performed and all of the education that you've collected and all of the projects that you've worked on from the beginning of time. So from high school to present, what have you done and what have you completed? A resume is going to be the highlights of that.
Yeah, almost think of it like your own personal portfolio of experience.
Awesome. Okay, I am so appreciative of the conversation that we're having here in the chat. I'm gonna just open this up with close this down with some closing tips, and then we'll use the last five to 7 minutes just to go through Q&A that we might have. So main walkaway and main tips that we want to do. We want to articulate the who. So remember the owl, articulate the who. What did you do? How did you do it? And what was the outcome? We want to articulate what you did, how you did it, and what the outcome was from that. And that's also translates really well into interviewing skill. You want to utilize that in your interviews when you connect with interviewers and go through that phone screen. What did you do? How did you do it? What was the outcome? We want to use consistent formatting that will help get past the reader's eye and will grab their attention. So again, something that's consistent like this as juxtaposed to something that's maybe busy like this. And then you want to use action-based words that convey transferable skills. So skills like that would show that you're multitasking, that you're efficient with your time, that you're effective with your communication, that you will meet deadlines. Those are all highly valuable skills, and you want to be sure that you're articulating those pieces. With that said, we're going to open it up. We've got a few questions in the Q&A. I'm going to leave this QR code for signing up here on the screen as we go through question and answers. But please, as you have questions, drop them in the webinar chat. And then I know that we've got a question that's come through. So I'm pivoting from a different industry into engineering. I'm still in my old industry position, but I have already done a few internships related to engineering, a few coding projects, a few classes. Here are the questions. Should I add that experience to my resume if I'm still in the current position in the industry? And would my leadership and soft skills experience in that previous industry be pertinent to applying to a software engineering position? Or rather, is that something a recruiter cares about? I hear really conflicting thoughts on adding work experience from a different field into a resume. Jake, what are your thoughts on putting experience? I'm in the food industry now. I'm pivoting into software engineering. I've done a lot of projects in software engineering, but I'm still currently employed. How would I navigate that on my resume?
Yeah, and I think it comes down to that configuration of the resume, right? Even think back to a few of those examples and, highlighting the relevant experience, you're going to want that up top. You're going to really want to hammer that with the bottom end or bottom half or, what have you, whatever the fraction may be, can show that, hey, I've been working in this space for this long. And even maybe that's where you would utilize a mission or objective portion of the configuration as well. So now you'd give 2-3 sentences of kind of a status update, if you will, of what is this change, why is this change, what's your main goal with that change, and then you add in the projects, the experience that you're gaining currently, and then you still are showing, hey, while I'm doing all of this, I'm also gainfully employed. And so that shows in itself a level of multitasking, a level of determination, a level of being that go-getter, which again in the tech space is so prominent in candidates. So I don't know if I touched on each point of that question, but hopefully that adds a little bit of insight.
Awesome. That's amazing. Great, thank you so much. Okay, let's take a look at any other questions that are coming through. Are Brilliant Black Minds services only for engineering? That's a great question. So yes, Brilliant Black Minds is specifically catered towards software engineering. We are specifically catered towards backend, so we don't have front-end development available quite yet. But these resume tips do span more than just the engineering community. These resume tips are relevant for every industry, whether you are going to go into client success or go into sales or go into engineering. But the Brilliant Black Minds program is specific for folks that are looking to up-level their skill and take free practical technical interviewing to potentially earn a software engineering job in the future. Wonderful. All right. Do you have any advice for recruiters who want to break into customer success? That's a great question. Okay, as a recruiter that broke into customer success, let me talk you through my story. So what I did while I was a recruiter is I really honed in and managed individuals during that recruitment process. Being able to speak to your ability to manage expectations and manage individuals through a process is primarily what the customer success industry is about. So in customer success, we want to know that you can do a couple things. We want to know that you're articulate and that you can articulate yourselves to others. You are going to be the forward face of that industry or of that business. And you're also going to need to be able to be sure that folks are utilizing the software, the skill, the industry, whatever it is, and drive a customer to a successful point. The way that I was able to articulate that is while I was doing recruiting, I was also in sales. And so I had an opportunity to leverage both my recruiting skill and my sales skill. And it was kind of multifaceted to talk about accounts that I was managing and to talk about accounts that I was working through. I also know that our very own Dennis is a customer success in that realm as well. And he's just linked an amazing book on Audible there, the Customer Success Professional's Handbook. And so I would also suggest you utilize that. If you did have more questions, you can reach out to me directly. My email is just my first name dot last name @karat.com. I'm happy to answer any individual questions. Just mention resume workshop in the subject line of that email, so I know that I can get back to you with those questions. I think we have time for one last question. What is your advice for someone that is switching careers and has little work experience in the field of the jobs he or she is applying to? For example, I'm pivoting from a medical background to UX design and writing. Any tips on how to best gain experience quickly and make oneself more attractive to the applicant? Okay, Jake.
Yeah.
Any advice to folks that are switching careers?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think first and foremost, I think it's going to take a little research on your end, right? Prepare, practice, set yourself up the best that you can to win. And so assuming you're doing the research and you're, learning what it takes to get that entry level type role in UX, for instance, then what? Okay, right? So medical to that. What seminars, what programs, what certificates, what free training videos or trainings through LinkedIn and some of those other platforms can you knock out? Because a lot of those come with certificates, and so those can then be added to the resume. So maybe you have a resume, full page of medical experience, but again, you bump that down and your main, that first piece is, again, that objective. And then all that you're doing proactively to get into that space. And then additionally, looking back in your time in medical, any transferable skills that you utilize, highlight the heck out of those in the medical space. So of course, you're not going to be doing UX per se in medical, but you are going to be working in probably, high stress environments and fast paced, fast moving. Again, going back to all of those buzzwords. So really highlighting those transferable and those words or skills that have those parallels to, again, the research that you've done as a candidate for that role, for that position, for that title, for that company that you're, prospecting yourself, is kind of what I would do to at least get started. Then, of course, kind of a cheat answer too is always network. Reach out to other, people in the space. Reach out to see how, they got into it. Not everyone was born into the role that they have today. And so they had to get their start somewhere. So again, utilizing those free resources, LinkedIn, social media, all of that stuff are all great tools that sometimes go underutilized in this capacity. So that's, again, kind of a good starting point, I would say.
Awesome. That's really, really helpful and valuable. Everyone in attendance today, I want to thank you all for taking some time and sitting with us. It's been a wonderful hour to connect with you all. I've dropped my email and my LinkedIn into the chat. You're more than welcome to connect with me. And what we'll do is we're going to follow up with an email hereafter with a few resume templates that you'll be able to utilize, as well as the contact information on LinkedIn for both Jake and myself. Again, thank you all so much for coming and sitting with us. I hope that you found value in today's session. I'm looking forward to connecting with you all very, very soon. And I'm wishing you all safe and happy holidays ahead, and a very happy new year upcoming.
Thank you all, Lucas, Dennis, everyone on here. Thank you for letting me join you guys for the last hour. Appreciate it.